So, how does a kid from a tiny remote island, a kid who literally started out delivering newspapers, grow up to become the father of a nation's missile program and then its most beloved president? It sounds like something out of a movie, right? Well, today we're diving into the incredible life of APJ Abdul Kalam, right from his autobiography. It's a story that really shows you just how far one little spark of ambition can take you. And this really gets to the heart of his entire story. This was the idea that powered his whole life. This belief that, we all have this divine fire inside of us, this incredible potential. And our main job in life is to just let it loose, to give it wings. So the big question is, how did he do it? How did he give his own fire wings? Let's find out. All right, so our story begins, and it's not in some big, bustling city. Nope. We're starting on the quiet island town of Ramaswaram. Just try to picture for a second. A place where life moves with the rhythm of the sea, full of ancient temples, and where everybody knows everybody. It was way, way far from the world of rockets and politics, but it was right here that the foundation of who Kalam was built. If you really want to understand Kalam, you have to look at his childhood. They didn't have a lot of money, that's for sure, but emotionally, he was rich. His dad, Jainal-Abdin, had no formal schooling but was just full of this deep wisdom and generosity. And his mom, Ashiyama, well, she was famous for feeding more strangers than her own family members in their home there on Mosque Street. I mean, can you imagine that kind of upbringing? It just baked this deep sense of community and strong values right into him, stuff that would stick with him forever.
So his parents gave him that solid foundation of honesty and self-discipline, right? But there were a couple of other people who really opened up his world. First, there was his brother-in-law, Jalaluddin. They would just walk for hours, and Jalaluddin would tell him all about these amazing scientific discoveries, basically painting a picture of a world way bigger than their little town. Then there was his cousin, Samsuddin, who gave him his first job. And get this, his job was to catch bundles of newspapers thrown from a moving train during the war. He said he never ever forgot that feeling of pride, earning his own money for the very first time.
And this quote, man, this just shows you the kind of wisdom that was at the core of his family. So picture this. Young Kalam is all set to leave home for school, and his mom is, understandably worried. But his dad, instead of just saying, it'll be okay, he shares these words from the poet Khalil Gibran. Think about that. It's more than just love. It's this deep, deep understanding that you have to let your kids find their own way. That kind of support, that was the real launch pad for everything that came next.
Okay, so with that incredible support system behind him, Kalam steps into the world of school. And it's right here, that this powerful dream starts to form. You could even call it an obsession, really, an obsession with flying. In high school, he had this teacher, Ayada Rai Solomon, who told him something that just stuck with him for his entire life. He basically said, look, if you want to achieve anything great, you have to master 3 things. First, you need a powerful desire. Second, you need an unshakable belief that you can do it. And third, you need to expect it to happen. Desire, belief, expectation. For Kalam, that burning desire was simple. He wanted to conquer the sky.
But his path wasn't exactly a straight line. First, he got a degree in physics, but then he had this realization, this moment where he knew his real passion was somewhere else. If he really wanted to chase that dream of flying, he needed to get into engineering. So, he got into the super prestigious Madras Institute of Technology, India's MIT basically, and he didn't even think twice. He jumped straight into aeronautical engineering. The target was officially locked in.
Of course, the road from dreaming about something to actually doing it is never, ever smooth, right? And for Kalam, his first steps into the professional world came with this absolutely crushing disappointment that, funnily enough, ended up pointing him exactly where he needed to go.
Okay, so after graduation, he's got 2 shots. Option A is his absolute dream, becoming a pilot in the Air Force. Option B is a more, normal job at the Ministry of Defense. He goes all the way to Dehradun for the Air Force interview. And here's the kicker. They had 8 spots open. He came in 9th. Just 1 spot away. He was absolutely devastated. But after some time, he picked himself up, accepted the other job, and basically said to himself, all right, if this is my destiny, so be it.
So at this new job, they give him a project, design India's first hovercraft. He and his small team just poured everything they had into it. They built this prototype. They called it Nandi, and it was a hit. The defense minister himself was so impressed, he actually took a ride in it with Kalam driving. But then, politics. The minister left office, and the project just got shelved. Done. It was a really tough lesson for him on how bureaucracy can just completely kill a great idea.
But then, a huge turning point. He gets called in for an interview with the one and only Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. We're talking about the father of India's entire space program. And Kalam said that Sarabhai wasn't just looking at his resume. He was looking for his potential. I love how Kalam put it. My dream was enveloped by the larger dream of a bigger person. I mean, wow. That single meeting put him on the track he was always meant to be on.
So, with Dr. Sarabhai as his mentor, Kalam joined what would become the mission of his life, a mission that would define his entire career and literally launch India into the space age, building the country's very first satellite launch vehicle, the SLV-3.
And you can't overstate how high the stakes were here. I mean, the whole country was watching. The date was August 10, 1979. After years of grinding work, the SLV-3 is on the launch pad. The countdown is perfect. Liftoff. But then, just over 5 minutes into the flight, disaster. A control system failed, and the rocket just tumbled right into the Bay of Bengal. A complete, catastrophic failure in front of everyone.
In the middle of that crushing defeat, another mentor, Dr. Brahm Prakash, gave him this incredible piece of advice. He said a project this huge is like climbing a mountain. You can't be all tense and restless. You have to be in a state of equilibrium, of balance. What a powerful lesson, right? How to handle massive failure without falling apart.
And somehow they found that balance. Almost exactly 1 year later, on July 18, 1980, they were back on the launch pad ready to try again. And this time, everything worked. The launch was flawless. The Rohini satellite shot right into orbit perfectly. And in that one moment, India joined this super exclusive club. It became only the 7th country in the entire world that could launch its own satellites. Talk about a comeback.
And you know, throughout his book, Kalam comes back to this again and again, the power of good mentors. The head of the space program at the time, Professor Satish Dhawan, did something amazing. After that first failure, he went to the press conference and took all the blame himself. But after the huge success, he pushed Kalam into the spotlight to take the credit. That kind of leadership, where the boss absorbs the failure but gives away the success, that's how India's space program pulled off the impossible.
But believe it or not, putting a satellite into orbit was just the beginning for Kalam. He was then asked to make a huge shift, moving from space exploration over to national defense. He was about to lead the program that would make his name famous all across India, the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program.
So he moves over to the Defense Research and Development Laboratory, DRDL for short, to head up this massive project. The whole point was to make India capable of building its own critical defense tech. Under his leadership, they developed a whole family of 5 missile systems. You had Prithvi, Akash, Trishul, Nag, and then, the big one, the most powerful of them all, Agni.
Now, of all of them, Agni, which actually means fire, was the crown jewel. The biggest problem they had to solve was something called re-entry. Think about it. A missile flies up out of the atmosphere and then has to come back in, facing temperatures of thousands of degrees. You have to build a heat shield that can survive that inferno. It was a massive, massive challenge. So when Agni finally worked, it was way more than just a tech win. It was India declaring its independence on the world stage.
So after this incredible life, after spending all those years building rockets and missiles, what was the philosophy that drove him? What was the real source of that inner fire we talked about at the beginning?
He reflects on this near the end of his book, and it's just so powerful. He says, look, he had no kids, owned no property, he had basically no worldly possessions. His legacy wasn't going to be in what he owned, it was in what he created for his country, and in all the people he inspired. His work, his contribution, that was his life.
And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. Kalam's life is just this incredible example of what can happen when you find that fire inside you and you spend your whole life giving it wings. And so, his story leaves us all with a pretty big question to think about. What's the divine fire inside you, and what are you going to do to give it wings?